Hello. Hello. Okay, so it is Tuesday morning. It's 9 o'clock, and we are starting on our next solvent. What we're looking at is, of course, good medicine making practices. But good medicine making practices with herbs, because I'm an herbalist, good medicine making practices have everything to do with choosing the right solvent. As much as choosing high quality herbs, it's choosing the right solvents. And so this is a really good way also to kind of understand the chemistry around herbalism. But also it is about how to make good medicine. And so often I see people who don't understand these concepts of medicine making products and putting products out there. And it's kind of obvious that they don't have this understanding. And so my hope is that in watching these videos and in doing more of your own research, that you really gain an understanding of the chemistry of medicine making. And if you, like many people, feel uncomfortable with the C word, when you're able to apply it to something that you love, if you're really drawn to herbalism, using herbalism as the foundation. Hi, everyone. Using herbalism as the foundation for understanding of chemistry is a great way for you to maybe move past that barrier that has been put in place because you had a shitty chemistry teacher in college. Happens to all of us. There are bad teachers out there. But if you're able to apply the information, then maybe you can grasp it a little bit better. So that's another hope of mine for this. So let's see. Good morning, Marcus. And hi, Ellie. Hi, Trisha. And Janice and Laura. Good morning, everybody. And all y'all quiet folks there, too. So, so the chemistry of vinegar, super interesting, super fun. And so we'll be looking at that today. If you have any questions, throw them on the thing. I have to remember to scroll because it doesn't scroll by itself. So if I don't get your comment, it's because I forgot to scroll and I'm getting all focused on this. Let's see. So let's start with what is vinegar, right? So vinegar is a product of fermentation of anything that contains enough either sugar or alcohol. So sugar or alcohol. Vinegar is basically ethanol converted, oxidized and converted into acetic acid and water. And then all sorts of other stuff that comes from the raw material that you started from in making vinegar. You can make vinegar from all sorts of things. So the finished vinegars have acetic acid and water and stuff. That stuff gives a lot of the nuances of using a lot of different herbs in a culinary fashion. For medicine making, we are making the assumption that our vinegar is going to be my default vinegar, apple cider vinegar. Apple cider vinegar. Whoops! There you go. Apple cider vinegar. This is just someone's apple juice jug. I buy apple cider vinegar in 5-gallon buckets because I go through a lot of it because I like vinegar. And then I just store it in here. So apple cider vinegar as kind of the default vinegar for medicine making. It's what most people use, but there's a lot of different vinegars. There's coconut vinegars and cane vinegars and all sorts of other ones for you to play with. They're all great. Play around with them and find the one that works best for you. I like the fruitiness of the apple cider vinegar, and there's some additional constituents in there that make it beneficial for me. But irrespective of what type of vinegar you're using, whether it's cane or coconut or apple cider vinegar, it is generally going to be right about 95% water. So first thing to realize, we got a horn going. 95% water. So we're not working with oil, we're not working with alcohol, we're not working with a solvent. Shh. We're not working with a solvent that can extract things that aren't polar, that aren't water soluble. We are extracting things that are water soluble because what we're working with is primarily water. We're working with water and acetic acid. Acetic acid. So acetic acid. Oh, hey, let me adjust that so you can see the whole of the thing. Sorry, I should have checked this out before I started. There you go. Acetic acid. So acetic acid is the thing that makes vinegar acidic, and that is the byproduct of the fermentation of ethanol. So you have acetic acid and water. Generally, most vinegars are going to be about 5% acetic acid. That's pretty much the standard for most culinary vinegars that are on the market. So if you go into your local health food store and you buy some vinegar there, it is going to be right around 5%. You can see 5% acetic acid. That's kind of the industry standard. Now, if you go to your farmer's market and you get some vinegar that's homemade by the person who has the apple farm, you don't know what the percentage of acid is in there unless they have done testing for it. They may or may not have done that. It's not the easiest testing to do. I'm sorry, my hair's bugging me and I have to get it out of my face. They may or may not have opted to test the acidity. It's not an easy test to do. You can also make your own vinegar. Easy to do, and that's great. You don't know the acidity. Does that matter a whole lot? Not too much, as long as you're sticking to just kind of the safer parts of medicine making. There's a couple of places where it's going to make a difference, but by and large, it doesn't matter all that much. So that's basically what we're working with. We're working with a solution of 5% acetic acid in water and stuff. But that 5% acetic acid makes all the difference because that makes an acidic environment, right? And so having that amount of acid in there really makes vinegar unique in its ability to extract certain constituents that that your plain distilled water was not able to do. Beyond that, there are benefits to just having an acidic liquid to use. So, so from here on in, I'm basically going to be talking about apple cider vinegar because, again, that's my vinegar and I really love it. Most of this is applicable to whatever type of vinegar that you're using. So for apple cider vinegar, what is on the market? There's varieties. So if you go and you get the vinegar that was always in my kitchen cabinet when I was growing up was the Heinz distilled apple cider vinegar, is not really something that we want to use. Generally, the distilled apple cider vinegars are not made from pure apple. They're often white vinegars that have been colored and flavored. And they're distilled, so they're purified. They're purified of all of the bacterial cultures that created the vinegar in the first place, and also all of the stuff that we were talking about. A lot of the flavor compounds and the nutritive compounds have been filtered out in the distillation process. So what you're left with is truly a 5% acetic acid and water and a little bit of some chroma coloring and maybe some flavoring compounds that were added in afterwards. That's significantly different from the vinegar that most of us love that has the stuff. Stuff is my word for the day, apparently. The precipitate down at the bottom that has various different compounds in there that we'll go into. This is significantly different. So yes, it's 5% acetic acid. Yes, it's mostly water. But in addition to that, it has the mother. So you've heard of the mother, read about mother on your bottles of Bragg's apple cider vinegar. The mother is a bacterial culture which forms in a vinegar environment, and so you can use mother to make new batches of vinegar. And irrespective of whether you want it or not, if you have vinegar and you put it into your cupboard and you leave it there for months on end and you bring it out, it's going to have this slime floating in it, right? And a lot of people freak out about that and tend to want to throw that away. But that's the mother. That's what you were paying additional amounts for. And that is the bacterial culture. That is what makes that vinegar a living food, as opposed to the distilled vinegar, which is absolutely not a living food. So we like that. If you don't like slime in your vinegar, totally get that. I understand not liking slime. You can filter it through just whatever filter process you like. Piece of cloth is fine, or a coffee filter, or just a strainer, and get rid of it. It'll regrow again because you got the bacterial culture in there, but that's okay. It's not a bad thing. Can homemade vinegar be used? So yeah, so Marcos, you totally can. You can make your own vinegar at home. You won't know, again, you won't know what the percentage is, but that's okay. You don't have to know that. With some exceptions that we'll go into. So where was I? Boop-de-boop. So mother, bacterial culture. Leave it in there, strain it out. It doesn't really matter that much. What you also have in there is in apple. Now this will not be applicable to other vinegars, but apples contain a pretty decent amount of another acid called malic acid. Right? Malic acid, from malus, Latin meaning apple. So malic acid is also found in apple cider vinegar. That's one difference between using the apple cider vinegar versus other ones. And malic acid is helpful in certain conditions. It's used quite often for fibromyalgia, for chronic fatigue syndrome. It's helpful at supporting the cellular energy production in muscle cells, and it's a nice compound. You can buy malic acid supplements that are used for that, but you can also just drink apple juice or eat apples, or use some apple cider vinegar and have malic acid in there too. So that adds to the acidity. And yes, you can use the mother from an old bottle to make a new vinegar, absolutely. And yes, Alicia, hi honey, I have totally thrown out mother vinegar because of the mother, which is why I'm so kind of focused on telling people not to do that now, because I have done that and I know how frustrating that is. So the mother is not the same as a SCOBY. So a SCOBY is a colony of a number of different bacteria, where mother is kind of a much more limited strain of bacteria. There you go. Okay, so what you don't want to use, so use whatever vinegar you like. Don't use the distilled vinegars, and particularly don't use the distilled white vinegar. Love the stuff for cleaning my house. It's great for cleaning my house, but it's not anything we want to use internally. Really, you do want to use the unfiltered, unpasteurized vinegars for food use, for culinary and healing uses. So we can use vinegar by itself for a number of different purposes. Internally, vinegar is often used to as a cooling agent, right? So the flavor the flavor of vinegar, primarily sour, acid, it's sour, and the sour flavor in Western herbalism is considered to be cooling. That's different, by the way, in some other modalities, which see it as heating, which I can understand. If you have a cut, a wound, and you pour acid in there, it's going to be heating, it's going to be irritating. But when we drink sour things, those organic acids that give the sour flavor to sour foods generally have an astringent, cooling effect on tissues. So just understand, different modalities have different ways of looking at flavors sometimes, and sour is one of the confusing ones. But I'm a Western herbalist, so we're talking about Western herbalism. In Western herbalism, sour is considered to be cooling. We crave sour things when we're overheated. In the summer, we like sour drinks, lemonade and fruits. And those organic acids and flavonoids, the chemicals that give sour flavors, often are things that improve tissue elasticity and strength, reduce the inflammatory process, and kind of quiet that down. So we can use vinegar internally, diluted in water. We generally want to dilute vinegar in water. 5% acidity is kind of a lot to take undiluted directly into our mouth, though I do it often. We want to drink some water afterwards to neutralize that intense acidity that can cause some irritation to the esophagus, and it can cause some softening of the enamel on your teeth. But so vinegar taken internally is very cooling. Shrubs are vinegar extracts of fruits that are commonly used as really lovely cooling agents. The liver likes that sour flavor, so the sour flavor is really good for general liver support and for digestive support. So here's a thing. A lot of people use vinegar, a couple of tablespoons of vinegar in water. You drink it before your meals to enhance digestion, right? That is a really good diagnostic tool, right? If you have achlorhydria, A meaning lack of, chlorhydria, hydrochloric acid. If you have achlorhydria or hypochlorhydria, too low an amount of acid being produced in your stomach, which is much more common, by the way, than hyperchlorhydria or too high an amount of acid. That's actually pretty unusual. It's much more common to have hypochlorhydria. One way to diagnose if your digestive problems are due to too much or too low an amount of acid is to take some vinegar, add it into water, drink that before your meals or after your meal if you're having dyspepsia, digestive disruption, and see what your body says. Does your body feel better with that? Cool. What you have found out is your stomach acid is generally low. What we need to do is increase that. If you feel an increase in acidity, more increased pain, don't do that again, and you are one of the few people who does have too much acidity, or you have just a lot of irritated and inflamed tissue that maybe needs to be healed before you work on this. You can still have that eroded, irritated, inflamed tissue from too much acidity and have hypochlorhydria. But that's for another discussion. For right now, we can use vinegar to diagnose that. But your poor digestion is not because you are deficient in acetic acid. And if you're just doing vinegar before your meals, all you're doing is throwing acetic acid into a system that wants acid, but that's not the acid that it uses, right? It uses hydrochloric acid. And so we want to support improved production of hydrochloric acid, and that is, again, different video, but that is using bitters, using, improving digestive function. So yes, you can use vinegar to support digestion short term. You can use it as a diagnostic tool to find out if you need vinegar, if you need acid, but really you are not healing poor digestion by taking vinegar before your meals. All you're doing is basically suppressing the symptoms. The symptom is a low production of hydrochloric acid. and you are treating that symptom with acetic acid, but you are not healing the body. So that's important because a lot of holistic healing recommendations are just take some vinegar before your meals and that'll be good. But it really isn't. If you leave kombucha a long time, you'll get a strong vinegar with some of the benefits of kombucha. Oh, you're just, okay, good. Thank you for answering that, Marcus. Let's see. So internally, digestive support, sure, as discussed. Liver support, absolutely. Hey, let's talk just a little bit about alkaline and acid and pH balance, shall we? Not going to get too into that because we only have an hour and I have a whole lot of other stuff to do. So I think that you will be, you should be very proud of me keeping this short. The alkaline diet concept is poor science that is not supported by actual physiology. So if you are spending a lot of money on alkaline water and alkaline supplements and trying to eat a diet that is alkaline, don't. Stop that. It's not working. The alkaline water, primarily what your alkaline water is doing when you are drinking your alkaline water, it's going down into the stomach and it is neutralizing your stomach acid. Remember, I just said most people with digestive problems have hypochlorhydria, too low an amount of stomach acid, and your very expensive alkaline water is neutralizing the little bit of stomach acid that you do have. What it's not doing is it's not having any effect on your constitutional state, the state of pH in your bloodstream. You can't do that. You're not allowed to do that. Your body regulates blood levels, pH of the blood, very, very tightly, and you can't just take an overpriced water supplement to change that. The body will cannibalize its own tissues in order to keep homeostasis in the bloodstream. That's how our bodies work, and you cannot change the pH of the blood. You can change pH of the saliva, you can change pH of your urine, but you cannot change your blood pH by diet or supplements or alkaline water or anything. You can't do it. So, so don't. That's all I'm going to say about that. Doesn't work. But you can mess up your digestive system. You really can cause a lot of digestive problems. And by neutralizing your stomach acid, three primary things are going to happen. By decreasing your stomach acid, you are going to decrease your body's ability to break down, absorb, and use proteins from your foods. You are going to decrease your ability of your body to ionize minerals, and minerals need to be ionized. They need to be bound to an acid before they move into the intestinal tract and move into the bloodstream. So you have just blocked your ability to ionize minerals. And the third thing is we have a pool of hydrochloric acid in our stomach in order to greet pathogens that enter our body with our food supply. So if you have some E. coli in your In-N-Out burger and you're eating that, you have just neutralized one of your body's first protections against pathogens entering your body. So three really important things that you've just destroyed by using alkaline water or any alkaline type of thing. So very short round. That's as short as I'm going to go with that. So yes, I'm pretty proud of myself. There are correlations. Just one more, Alicia, and then I'm done. There are correlations between things like cancer and pH and various other conditions and pH, but there is a really strong inability to distinguish between correlation and causation. So yeah, they're correlated, but it isn't always causation. All right, so externally, we like vinegar because it helps to rebalance the what's called the acid mantle. All of our skin has a slightly acidic layer to it. That's how it likes to be. And so when we wash that layer off, we disrupt the biome of the skin. And so a dilute vinegar solution as a wash after we shower, or after we wash our face, after we wash our hair. Anytime we're washing, we can use a dilute. Generally about a 1 to 5 is my usual dilution for vinegar, standard 1 part vinegar to 5 parts water. Can kind of reestablish that acid mantle of the skin, and can be really helpful for skin that tends to be really inflamed, dry, irritated. Vinegar is also really good for inhibiting fungal growth or yeast growth. So if you have fungal infections, vinegar is one of my favorite things to use for those. And you can infuse your vinegar with herbs, which I promise we're going to go into. You can infuse your vinegar with herbs that are also antifungal to make a really good external treatment for fungal infections. So, so that is nice also. External application of vinegar is also really good for any of those heat signs that we were talking about. So heat signs in skin present as redness, inflammation, heat, warmth, right? So think rashes, bug bites, bee stings, burns, any kind of irritation, inflammation of the skin like that. A dilute vinegar solution on the skin. Again, with an addition, if you like, of other herbs that are also supportive, is really lovely for heat signs in the skin. One of my favorite ones is rose vinegar. So rose petals. Rose petals, you can use fresh or you can use dried, doesn't really matter. Extracted in vinegar makes a really good all-purpose skin tonic for soothing the skin, especially, again, skin that is red, inflamed, irritated. And again, you're diluting it. You're not using the undiluted vinegar because that would be irritating and it would increase your redness. But a dilute solution is really awesome for that. You don't have to use the red roses. I do because it's mostly what I have in my apothecary and it's what I grow at home, because in other applications, I really like red roses. I like the presence of the anthocyanins, the pigments in here. However, if I'm using it externally, anthocyanins have very little effect externally. And in fact, flavonoids are not really extracted really well into vinegar. Flavonoids and other acids, vinegar's already got its own acids. It likes its own acids. So anything that is somewhat acidic is going to be really poorly absorbed into your vinegar. So you don't want to use things like making a vitamin C vinegar isn't going to work, because vinegar is not going to really absorb. If you wanted to do like, I see rose hips and amla and acerola cherry vinegar extract. Well, it doesn't make any sense. And here we get into the understanding of chemistry and medicine making. Vinegar doesn't extract vinegar. You'd be better off using a slightly alkaline medium for extraction of vitamin C into a solution like that. So we don't really use the vinegar for extraction of flavonoids or acids or things like that. Where vinegar shines is in one primary area, in extraction of minerals. So vinegar is really, really good for pulling minerals into solution, because minerals love acidity, right? They don't like alcohol, so we can't make tinctures of mineral-rich plants. So a tincture of oat straw or nettle or horsetail or alfalfa or any of the really mineral-rich plants doesn't work that well just for the extraction of minerals. There's other chemistry in those plants for which a tincture might be just fine, but if you're looking at it for the nutritive value, tincture is not the way to go. A water extract is great. A vinegar extract is great. So that's where I really, really love vinegar for medicine making, is for extraction of minerals. And also aromatic compounds, some pungent compounds. Certainly one of the best known of mineral extracts is this one right here, which is fire cider. Fire cider is a vinegar extract of garlic and ginger onions, horseradish, cayenne, and stuff. Lots of people put other things into their fire cider to make it a their own unique presentation of it. Look into free fire cider. Lots of information out there on how to make fire cider, so I'm not going to really go into that here because that's been covered exhaustively by many other herbalists, including Rosemary Gladstar. So you can go on YouTube and find a video of Rosemary Gladstar teaching you how to make fire cider, and you can't get much better than that. So, hi Terry. Let's see. So, fire cider is a great way of extracting those pungent aromatic compounds in a vinegar solution. That works really well. I will say that a lot of people do things like they throw turmeric in their fire cider formula. It's a great idea, but in actuality, vinegar is a really poor solvent for turmeric. The curcuminoids in turmeric and a lot of the other constituents just are not going to extract very well into vinegar. So you can throw it in there, but it's not really going to be present to any considerable degree in the finished product. However, one of my favorite things, and I promise I'll stop talking about fire cider after this, but one of my favorite things to do with fire cider is all of the marc here, all of the vegetable material. When I make my fire cider, I'm very careful to clean it really nicely. I used to just chop it up and throw it in there. I don't care, I'm extracting it. So all of the marc was going to go into the compost pile. But now I don't do that because about 10 years ago, I started to play with the idea of taking that marc when it was, didn't have unusable parts in it. Strain out your fire cider, set that aside. Now you have the marc, which is the vinegar infused vegetables, and I put that into the blender, and I add about a third of the volume of honey, and I grind it up, and it makes an awesome fire cider, like a chutney. It's basically a chutney, and you just eat it. It is astoundingly good. I have gone through almost a whole bottle of fire cider chutney like that with apples and cheese, and then the chutney on that, and just eating it that way. Oh my God, I ate so much of that. If you did that with your turmeric, that would be great, because then you're ingesting the turmeric and you're able to absorb it. But the turmeric would not be coming out in your vinegar. All right, chaga. I don't know. I don't know about chaga. You could try it. So with chaga, you want to consider that it's a mushroom. So as a mushroom, it has that chitinous cell wall, and that chitinous cell wall will not break down if you just throw it in here and let it steep, right? You need heat and you need time. So, so you'd get very little out of your chaga just doing a cold vinegar extraction. If you wanted to, you could do a decoction. You have to decoct. You have to have some type of some way of having heat and water and time with your mushrooms. That's just how you're going to break down that chitin. But maybe if you did that, did a water extraction, decoction, reduce that way down, and then throw some vinegar in there. But I don't know what you would do about that. And one of the things that you would be missing in that would be the betulinic acid. The betulinic acid in chaga is one of the constituents that is considered to be of interest, and it would not be absorbed into the vinegar, because we already talked about the fact that an acidic solvent does not extract acids very well. So there's that. So I'm thinking chaga probably not. Now that I'm kind of talking through it with you, Janice, I'm thinking maybe that would not be such a good idea. Boy, y'all are chatty today, which is great. That's fine. Dehydrated and powder for seasoning. Terry, I've been wanting to do that, and I just haven't. I need to throw some in my dehydrator. Maybe I'll do that with this one. Yeah, the chutney, Mickey. The chutney is so awesome. Yeah, chaga needs heat. That's, whoopsie. Sorry, Tricia, I just pinned your comment. Oh, there we go. Okay. Yeah, drying. Okay, I'm going to definitely have to dry the mark and grind that out. All right, so that is one of the ways that we can make medicine out of vinegar. Another thing, not herbal, but super important, because minerals like acids, Paul Bergner, brilliant herbalist, brilliant nutritionist, when he was running the North American Institute of Medical Herbalism in Colorado, he had a student there who came up with a formula, and they used it in the clinic. So Paul was able to amass information about this formula with hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of clinical cases. So, so this is just brilliant. Remember, I was saying that for minerals to be absorbed in the body, they need to be ionized, right? Ionized. They need to be attached to an acid, hydrochloric acid, if you have hydrochloric acid. If not, there needs to be some other type of ionization. So one of the primary mineral deficiencies in our culture right now is magnesium. And ionized magnesium supplements are big right now in the natural foods industry. There's all sorts of them. You see the Calm powder, right, is magnesium, and it's citric acid, and they are in a powder together. And when you take that magnesium and citric acid powder and you add it to water, fizzing happens, right? That fizzing is ionization. It's the complexing of the magnesium and the citric acid to form magnesium citrate. And magnesium citrate is an ionized mineral supplement. And so that doesn't rely on acidity in the stomach because it's already been ionized, so you get a much higher rate of absorption. Lots of different types of ionized minerals on the market, and they're great. They really do enhance absorption, utilization of magnesium. But they tend to be pricey, and so that kind of limits access for people. And so this recipe from Bergner, what I like about it is it makes an ionized, very high quality magnesium really accessible to people. And what it uses is vinegar and milk of magnesia. Milk of magnesia is magnesium oxide, right? Magnesium oxide is very concentrated magnesium. It's got a lot of magnesium in it, but it's not ionized. It's poorly absorbed. And so it generally ends up going right into your intestines, where it draws moisture into the intestinal tract and causes a very strong laxative effect. So milk of magnesia is a laxative. It's not a stimulant laxative. It's not irritating the intestinal lining and inducing peristalsis the way that a lot of herbs like Cascara sagrada and senna do. It's doing it by drawing moisture into the intestinal tract through the presence of that magnesium. But it's not really absorbed very well into the bloodstream. It's staying in the intestinal tract. So we want to ionize that milk of magnesia. Milk of magnesia, by the way, dirt cheap. So I got this from, I think, the CVS pharmacy here. It was about $2 for a bottle, maybe $3. I don't remember. Let's say $3 for a bottle of milk of magnesia. And you want to get it with the least amount of ingredients. This has the magnesium hydroxide and water and some sodium hypochlorite in it. That's it. So there's no other flavorings, there's no other preservatives. It's a pretty clean product. Basically magnesium in a solution. So we're taking magnesium and we are adding apple cider vinegar, acetic acid. And if you combine magnesium and acetic acid together, what you get is magnesium acetate. This is a very highly absorbable very nicely ionized. It's highly absorbable, but it's a pretty weak ionic bond. It's not a really strong ionic bond, which is one of the ways that it enhances absorption. So a weak ionic bond, you add it together in a 1-to-4 ratio. So 1 part of your milk of magnesia to 4 parts of your vinegar. It's actually like 3.5 or something like that in Paul's original recipe, but I remember 4 better than I remember 3.5, and I want to be sure that all of the magnesium is complexed, is ionized. So a little bit more vinegar, I think, is fine and is better than too much magnesium. Right? So 1-to-4 works well. So for every 1 ounce of magnesium, you add 4 ounces of vinegar. You mix it in together in a jar, and it will kind of cloud up. A little tiny bit of fizz, but mostly just clouding up. Let it sit overnight, and it turns clear. And now what we have is a complex magnesium acetate solution. Very cheap. It is pennies. This bottle of ionized magnesium supplement costs maybe 25 cents to make, because vinegar is cheap and milk of magnesia is cheap, and I'm only using a little bit of it. Generally, the dosage is about 1 tablespoon per day. It's a very highly absorbed form of magnesium, so you don't need a whole lot. Some people can go up to 2 tablespoons a day, but usually about 1 tablespoon, 3 teaspoons. Now, you don't want to take it all at once, because your body can only absorb a certain amount at a time. And so if you take it all at once, you're going to get some diarrhea. But if you put it into your water supply and just kind of sip it all throughout the day, you're getting a low amount of a very highly absorbed form of magnesium all throughout the day. It does a very good job at enhancing, at increasing blood levels of magnesium. Very, very reliable, clinically shown to have a really good effect on magnesium levels in the body, and super cheap. Now, you need to, when you're mixing it into water, it needs to be in just water and nothing else. Remember that acetate bond is a weak ionic bond, and so if you add it to other things, it may drop that bond, and then it isn't ionized anymore, and you lose that absorption. So that's the only thing. Just put it into water and drink it. Start with a smaller amount. Oh, no, Alicia, and I just explained what there. And totally would ruin the taste, because, oh, the other thing is, this stuff tastes like shit. It's gross. It's metallic, and vinegary. It's nasty. So put it into a pretty large amount of water so that you can get it down. It's not yummy. Let's talk about yummy things, because there's lots of yummy things that you can do also. So in keeping with that vinegar enhancing absorption of minerals, lots of herbs are accumulators of minerals. Lots of the herbs that we use, some of our most beloved herbs, are beloved because they're deeply, profoundly nourishing. They have a wide range of minerals and a really high volume of minerals. So whoops, I just kicked that. So I keep on trying to flip my screen, and it's not a finger type screen. I've been having diarrhea and stomach cramps and bloating, and need ideas to help it. Yeah, let me get back to that later, Hannah, because there are some great things. Right, Terry, right? Yeah, we know nasty tasting stuff. We are not kidding when it tastes nasty. But yes, Gloria, let's go to yummy things. Yummy things are herbal mineral extracts. So what are some herbs? I'm going to ask you, because we've got some smart people in there. What are some herbs that you like that are mineral rich, nutritive herbs, the herbs that you just take when you want to feel deeply, deeply nourished? What are some of those? Just type them in the comments there, and I will throw them on our list, and we'll actually make some of it from your recommendations. I just have to. What do you think? We're going to make a mineral acetum. An acetum is a vinegar extract of plants. Nettle, yeah, definitely one of the primary ones. Nettle, Let me get you some nettle. What else? We got nettle. What else do we have? Milky oats, oat straw. We'll go with oat straw. But milky oats, remind me about milky oats because we're going to talk about that. Nettle oats, horsetail, yeah. Absolutely, nettle oats, horsetail. Any others? Those are some of the big ones. Yeah. So I'm going to wait for a couple more comments there, but nettle, oats, and horsetail, some of the most nourishing plants that we can think of, and primarily they are nourishing because of their mineral content. We don't use herbs by and large for vitamin content. Sometimes there's some carotenoids in there, but the amount that we get from herbs doesn't even come close to the amount we get from foods. So we don't generally rely on our herbs for vitamins. We rely on them for secondary metabolites, all of the flavonoids and phenolic compounds and all of the constituents that we use for medicine. But with the nutritives, a lot of times what we're looking at is mineral content. So to maximize that, chickweed, yes, alfalfa, burdock, dandelion, yellow dock, yeah. Yellow dock, dandelion, and burdock. Chickweed I love, and people disagree with me about this. That's totally fine. You're allowed to disagree with me about this. I really prefer chickweed when it's fresh. So a fresh chickweed vinegar in the spring, when chickweed is just abundant, grab some of that, throw it in a jar, pour vinegar over that, and let it steep. Oh, chickweed vinegar is delightful. But I'm not wild about chickweed as a dried plant, so I tend to not do that. Yes. Bidens, yeah, burdock, yellow dock, yeah. So we have a good amount here of plants that are mineral rich. But look at those. There's so many of the plants that we just kind of go to day after day, all of the nutritive ones, the ones that we return to over and over and over again. And a lot of them that are used for foods are beneficial because they are mineral rich. They have those deep, long taproots that pull minerals out of the ground. They have the foliage that tends to hold those minerals there. Oat straw is one of the highest sources of magnesium and silica and calcium in the herb world. Extremely rich. Nettle, of course, has all of those as well, a very wide range of minerals, a wider range than oat straw, although oat straw is higher in many of those. By the way, oat straw and most other grasses, most grasses are pretty rich in silica. Silica's part of what gives a grass its structure. So, so if you're looking for silica as a supplement and you don't have oat straw around, whatever, you can use a Bermuda grass, whatever grass is around you, totally use that as your silica source. Certainly the highest silica source that we can think of is horsetail. That is so high in silica that it will cut you. But silica, calcium, magnesium, used for structural integrity. So we use these for musculoskeletal strength, for keratinous tissue strength, for hair and nails. Magnesium for muscle support. Magnesium is stored in muscle tissue in much the same way as calcium is stored in bone tissue. And so we require magnesium in high amounts for all of the different types of muscle in our body. And a magnesium deficiency can present as muscle contraction, irritation, weakness, spasm, cramps, as well as so many other things, because there are hundreds of applications of magnesium. So by making a wide range, as you've given us, by having a wide range of herbs here, we get a really wide range of minerals in our finished product. So we can do just a single plant, that's totally fine. If you're looking for those nutrients in that particular plant, if you're looking for silica, then making a horsetail vinegar is going to be great, because then you got all sorts of silica. But if you want to make it wide range, use a wide range of plants. So we have alfalfa. Did I get the alfalfa? I didn't get the alfalfa. I saw someone said alfalfa. I just forgot to get it. So alfalfa. So what we're doing is we're making food, right? We're using vinegar and we're using food type herbs. So we're making food. I don't have to measure these out. I can, and if I was making a product, of course I would want to. But for us, it's just you and me here. I'm just going to kind of throw some, what I need is mine. So I'm going to throw some alfalfa in there, and I'm going to throw some oat straw in there. Lots of oat straw because I live in some oat straw. And nettle, yeah, nice amount of nettle in there. And burdock. I probably should grind the burdock because it's a root to enhance the extraction, but I'm not going to. And horsetail. I don't remember if I put horsetail or not. Oh, well, I'm doing it again. Just a little bit of yellow dock. Yellow dock is a bit more bitter, so I don't want to put too much in there. And for me, so yellow dock is really good for building blood. So if you have anemia, you'd want to really bump up the yellow dock in this. I don't menstruate anymore, so I don't really need a whole lot of iron, so I wouldn't really be using a lot of it. I do a lot of other things for digestive and liver support, so I personally don't really need the yellow dock in there as much, but yeah, I'm gonna throw a little bit. Dandelion leaf. So you can do this with fresh plants also, just like a, well, fire cider. With fresh plants, there's a really important issue to take into account, and this goes for fire cider, and it goes for using any kind of fresh plants like chickweed or whatever. That 5% acidity is beneficial for enhancing extraction of constituents, but it's also beneficial because acidity is important for preservation. And so vinegar, we don't have to refrigerate because vinegar is shelf stable because of the acidity. Now, if that acidity drops down, the stability of your solution is going to decrease. And the more juicy stuff you put into your formula, the more you are decreasing the acidity of your finished product, and the shorter your shelf life is. If you end up with a fire cider product that's just filled with the juicy veggies, and you squeeze that out, you squeeze out every little bit of that fire cider, you may find your fire cider ferments, where someone who used a little bit less of the juicy plants and did not squeeze them out. I generally don't squeeze my fire cider, I drain it, but I do not press it the way that I will press almost any other herbal extract, because I want to get every little bit of my solvent out of there. The exception is when I've got a lot of fresh plants in vinegar, because I want to maintain that acidity. Same thing with your herbs. If you're using a lot of fresh herbs, you want to be mindful of that. The more juicy they are, and the chickweed is a great example of this, the more you're diluting it and the shorter the shelf life is. So I make chickweed vinegar. I love it. I keep it refrigerated, and I've not had a problem with it. I would be looking for some notices, some indicators of fermentation in the product, but I don't see it. But I also use it pretty quickly because it's really yummy. So with the dried plants, we're going to be filling our jar up about halfway. All right. So you could grind these. I'm not gonna, but you could. And we are going to add our vinegar to it. So I'm just going to pour it over. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to modify this a little bit. Many of you know this already. So yes, totally could run it through the NutriBullet after adding the vinegar. Absolutely could do that. We could do all of this, and at the very end, in fact, I might do that, Donna. That's a nice idea. Yeah, throw it in the NutriBullet and give it a blitz just to break up that plant material, right? The more surface area we have exposed to the solvent, the better our extraction is going to be. So that's a very good idea, Donna. Kaolin related, absolutely. Most nourishing roots are mineral accumulators, absolutely. And if you look, it's those tap roots, right? Because those tap roots go deep down into the soil. We have a lot of plants generally tend to have the surface roots, right? The more superficial roots, and they're taking all those nutrients out of those surface roots. But you have dandelion. Dandelion has those long tap roots that's going down much further, much deeper in. Burdock, another weed, those that nourishing deep roots. So the further down you get, the more you've got the minerals in that deeper soil. You can draw that up. Number one, you draw that up and then deposit it on the surface. People pull out dandelion, they pull out burdock because they're taking nutrients from the other plants. They're not taking nutrients from the plants, they're bringing nutrients from the soil, bringing them up. And if you take the leaf and then just deposit it as green mulch on the surface, you're now putting those nutrients up in the surface for those shallow rooted plants to get at, like your lettuce. And it's going to increase the nutritional content of your lettuce because your lettuce roots never got down where the dandelion was. The dandelion wasn't competing for nutrients with your lettuce. It was breaking up the soil and it was getting those deep nutrients. And then if we harvest it, as you said, Terry, then we're getting all of those nutrients. Yeah, so those deep taproots are always mineral accumulators. It's a really good indicator of that. Okay, so if I continued to fill this up with vinegar, I would have my mineral acetum. I'd let that sit for however long. I could totally heat this up. I don't want to wait a week or 2 weeks or whatever. What I can do is I can put this into a pot, maybe run it through the NutriBullet, like Donna said, put it into a pot, heat it up. Heat is going to pull out those minerals more rapidly. Let it simmer for a little bit, but with the lid on because vinegar fumes are nasty. And then I could let it cool, strain it out. I got my mineral acetum. Minerals are elements. They are not going to be damaged by heat. They have gone through the formation of the universe. A little bit of heat on our stove is not going to damage them. So other things are damaged by heat, but the things that we're interested in, not going to be irritated by that. So we could heat this up and have it extract really quickly, or we could just let it sit for a couple of weeks and then strain it out. Either way is fine, whatever you want to do. I don't know about cannabis root, Misty. I've not worked with it. If anyone else has worked with it, I'd love to hear about it. And you can add a powdered acid. You could add citric acid to bump up the pH. But again, it's really hard to actually measure the pH. I don't know how much citric acid you could, but totally, Chris. Yeah, you could just take some citric acid and bump it up in there. If you were like, oh, super juicy fire cider here, add that in. Yeah, absolutely. Let's see. So, mineral acetum, vinegar up to the top. That'll be great. However, I'm going to make what you all have been waiting for. Instead of an acetum, I'm going to make an oxymel. Oh, I didn't write the ingredients. So our ingredients are nettle, dandelion leaf, burdock, oat straw, yellow dock, boop-de-boop, oh, and horsetail. Sorry for my abbreviation. Hope you can read that. Is that right? 1, 2, 4, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. What am I missing? Alfalfa. All right, that's what we have in our bottles so far. I can modify this by throwing some honey in. So oxymels are a combination of vinegar and honey as a solvent. So now, by adding in honey, we have 2 solvents. We have vinegar, and all that implies, but we also have honey. Honey is a little bit better a solvent for various purposes. Honey is also having a high amount of sugar. It is also a good preservative. And if we're adding in honey, that means that we can actually let that pH drop down a little bit because we do have some sugar in there as a preservative too. Generally, the ratio of vinegar to honey that I like for my acetums, your mileage may vary, is 3 parts vinegar to 1 part honey-ish. that gives a pleasing sweetness. I love the sweet-sour combination of oxymels. So that gives a nice sweet-sour balance without being too sweet, because I don't like it too sweet. But 3 parts vinegar to 1 part honey works really well. So I'm going to throw honey in there along with the vinegar. And if I'm doing this, depending on the honey that I'm using, I might not want to heat it, because if I'm using just kind of a workhorse honey, this Wild Mountain honey, it's a pretty good, reliable, inexpensive. It's been heated, it's been filtered, it's already gone through all of that, but it's also really honey, and it's inexpensive and widely available, and so it's fine. I wouldn't worry too much about heating that because it's already been heated. But if I had honey from my own bees or someone else's bees, or just really good, valuable honey that was really, truly unheated, most honey that says it's unheated is heated, I wouldn't want to heat that, because I'm not of the opinion that heating honey destroys it and makes it a poison, as some people say. No, that's really overstating things, and we don't help ourselves or anyone else by making these grandiose hyperbolic statements. But raw honey has a lot of benefits in having enzymes and delicate constituents in there that that I do want to keep. If I've bought expensive raw honey, or if I've sourced a honey from bees that I know and love, or someone else knows and loves, maybe I'm not going to want to boil that. This one, I probably could, but I'm not going to. So this, then, now I'm using the vinegar and the honey together as 2 solvents. That is going to really pull out a lot of those minerals, and it's going to give that sweet sour thing. And alfalfa, thank you, Gina. Yes, and yes, Ricara, you can absolutely do heat and let it sit. Once it's extracted, it's pretty much there, so you can do whatever you want. Vinegar extracts will oxidize, so you'll notice that your vinegar will be one color. You'll notice that just with your plain vinegar, right? When you buy it, it's this really lovely kind of orangey color. If you let it sit for a little while, it'll turn brown. That's oxidation happening. Once it's oxidized, and it still is okay, but it's not what it was, and the oxidation isn't going to affect the mineral content, but byproducts of oxidation may be things that we don't necessarily want to be getting in there. So I do, you can let it sit for a little bit of time, but vinegars are one of those things that I don't let sit for too long. Tinctures, they'll sit for years. I don't care. They're in an alcohol base, and that alcohol is a really good preservative, so they just hang out there until I'm ready to get to them. But vinegars, oils, things that the menstruum is not as stable, I want to pull those out a little bit more rapidly. So yeah, you could let it sit, but maybe not too long. Yeah, I'd love to hear your experiment, Misty, with the cannabis root. That would be lovely. So here we have our mineral-rich oxymel. I'm going to let that sit for a couple of weeks, and then I will strain it through my strainer. And when I am finished with it, okay, you're not going to open that. When I'm finished with it, I'm going to have something like this. So this is my herbal mineral oxymel that I make, which is nettle, horsetail, red clover, oat straw, burdock, a little bit of hibiscus in there, and then apple cider vinegar and honey. So I store it in a jar, and then I take it. You can take it by the teaspoon. Remember at the very beginning, we were talking about people using a tablespoon of vinegar and a little bit of honey right before meals. So that's not going to be so good for your digestion if you are low in hydrochloric acid. That's not dealing with that issue. But if you're going to take some, if you take it that's been infused in minerals, number one, the minerals are alkaline. That's why they're drawn into that acid environment. So we have adjusted the pH downward just a little bit by throwing those mineral rich herbs in there. So it's not quite as caustic to the gut lining. But also it's mineral rich. Now it's a nutritive formula. So a tablespoon of this in some water, drink that before meals or after meals or anytime in between meals, whenever you like, is going to be a really good source of a wide range of minerals. Does it have a high milligram dosage of minerals? No, it does not. You can't take this for treatment of a frank mineral deficiency. If you have low magnesium status in your body, you will not correct that magnesium status by taking this. You need to take magnesium. Now you could do the milk of magnesia formula. You could totally do that because that's actual magnesium. But you can't just drink oat straw tea or take an oat straw oxymel to bring your magnesium status up. Once it's really, really low, we have a tendency just to use it all up and not put it back into our bodies. And after a bit of time, you just need to supplement. So supplement for about a month with your magnesium supplement. And then once you build up your well of nutrient status, go on to your mineral-rich vinegars. They're a very good source of a very wide range of minerals and other nutrients in kind of a low food grade amount. We're not talking taking a quarter cup of this. More is not necessarily better. It is very acidic, and you can really mess up your stomach by taking too much vinegar. So generally, we're using a tablespoon, maybe 2 tablespoons a day as a maximum dosage on that. But it's wonderful, and it's a great way of getting those nutrients. And it's tasty. It's super, super tasty. So you can also use it in other drinks. You can throw it into soups. You can throw it into anything you want just to enhance the nutrient content of those foods. Once ready, you strain it. What do you do with the mark? So my mark for these goes into my compost pile. Vinegar is great in the compost. The oxymel is a great thing to do with kids, and kids quite often like that sweet sour flavor. My son digs this. He's 13. He just loves that. How much time you leave it? So here's the thing. We've talked about this before in these videos. I think that people wait too long in their extractions. I don't think that tinctures or glycerites or really almost anything, with a few exceptions, needs to sit for a month at a time. It just doesn't need that long. Generally, a week, maybe 2 weeks is going to be sufficient for this. Minerals in an acidic environment, minerals are being liberated pretty readily. They want to go out into that environment. They don't need a month. There may be other reasons in your medicine making that you would want to wait a lunar cycle or whatever. There are different considerations, and if it's important for you to have that lunar energy or to do your medicine making from full moon to full moon or whatever, that is great, and you do you, that's wonderful. But I don't think the medicine needs that for extraction of the minerals. Lots of other reasons why we make stuff. So not speaking to that. My current batch of, so yeah, week, maybe 2 weeks. Or if you heat it overnight and then strain it in the morning, and I think it's fine. Or let it sit for another couple of days if you really want to, but that heat really pulls it out quite nicely. My current batch of fire cider changed from lovely golden to almost colorless. Loss of color, that's really interesting. So I would look and see if you have, do you have a lot of precipitate down at the bottom? Has it just kind of precipitated and dropped down? I don't know. That would be, I don't know why that is. Yay, oh gosh, oh it's after 10. Let's see. Really quickly, one of the things Alicia brought up, milky oat oxymels. Milky oats. We love milky oats. Milky oats is deeply restorative, deeply nourishing to the nervous system. Milky oats, these are the oat tops that go into fruit in the spring, and they start to form the grains. Before those grains have ripened, they are unripe. They are in what's called the milk form. If you take those little grain tops and you press them, they'll pop, and you have a milk is secreted. That is the unripened oat grain. And that contains some unique alkaloids that are not found once the grain ripens, right? Once it becomes an oat, it has all sorts of other good stuff, lots of silica, lots of nutrients, lots of starches, beta-glucans, all sorts of great things, but it does not have those alkaloids that were present when it was in milk. This is why so many people love doing milky oats tinctures or glycerites with the fresh plants. So glyceride is doable, and that's wonderful. But what I did this year, and I really like it, is I made a fresh milky oat oxymel. So took those fresh milky oats and did a fresh plant extract with them in vinegar with honey. The reason for that is one of the other constituents, and we didn't go into that here because you can actually cause some problems here. One of the other constituents that seems to like vinegars is alkaloids. Now, alkaloids are a big and complex and confusing class of constituents, of plant constituents. There's a lot of different types of alkaloids. They have a lot of different types of affinities. There's very little that you can say about alkaloids that applies to all of them across the board, unlike what you can say about flavonoids or about polysaccharides or about stereosaponins or whatever. Not a whole lot of things you can say about alkaloids, but in general, alkaloids like to be extracted in acids. So we can extract alkaloids into an acidic medium, and that's great. The problem is a lot of alkaloids in plants are potentially toxic and need to be used much more respectfully than some other constituents. Not the ones in milky oats, but certainly I've seen people make comfrey oxymels, which is a stupid idea because comfrey has pyrrolizidine alkaloids that you are now concentrating and extracting into that oxymel. It tastes great, I'm sure it tastes yummy, but that is not healthy for anyone to be drinking, and you should not be doing that. And you are preferentially extracting and concentrating those pyrrolizidine alkaloids in that oxymel. But the unique alkaloids in the milky oats seem to be extracted quite well into an oxymel. So I've been playing with that this year, and I really like it. It tastes so good. It tastes really, really good. And I get the same feeling when I take it over a period of time that I get from milky oat tincture. And it's nice because you don't have to use the glycerin, which some people kind of don't like because it is somewhat synthetic, as we talked about in the glycerin class. And some people can't do alcohol. So vinegar is a nice option for that too. So next spring, when the oats come to harvest, you might want to try playing with making an oxymel with those. I think you'll really like it. All right. I think that's everything that I wanted to cover. I know there were things that I'm forgetting, but if there is, I'll put them in the comments. Try making an oxymel with something. Try make a magnesium supplement. It is very likely that you have magnesium deficiency because most of us do. And supplementing with magnesium is one of the most important things that you can do. So ionized magnesium supplements are quite often way too expensive for a lot of people, but milk of magnesia and vinegar is awesome. I love that. So let me know if you have any comments below. And then I want to remind you that this Friday morning, also from 9 to 10, I'm going to start doing the Q&A. I get a lot of people asking me questions in DMs, and which is great. I'm happy to answer questions, but a lot of those questions, I would like to share the information with all y'all because they're really good questions and it's really important information. So feel free if you have any questions that you'd like answered in the Q&A on Friday. I'll just grab some of the questions from the comments and then answer them. I'll also have the comments, so if you forget to, then you can just comment in the comment thread like today. If you have something that is more sensitive and you don't generally want to be shouting it out in the wide world of Facebook, feel free to send me a direct message, and we can post it anonymously. That's not a problem at all. And you do not have to be embarrassed. I deal with things all the time that are not, that people feel uncomfortable with. And it's not a big deal. We all have bodies and we all have issues that everyone is experiencing. We tend to sometimes think that we're the only ones who are doing it. I promise you, other people will benefit from your questions. So, so yeah, leave questions here in the other thread, and I will see you with the next Tuesday class in 2 weeks, and I will also see you this Friday. So thanks for joining me, and I will talk to you later. Again, comments, questions, if you have them in the comments section. If I hair rinse, that's what I missed, Alicia. Darn it. Well, I talked about it a little bit, but the hair rinse thing, yeah. Vinegar for hair rinse, awesome and good. So that's about that for that. I will see you on Friday. Thanks. Bye-bye. How do I end this thing? Yeah.